The Sustainable Voice, bringing you big successes from small places worldwide.
Hey guys, this is Ashish and Leigh back with the latest episode of The Sustainable Voice. As you can see, I'm clearly not in the studio. Leigh, do you know where I am?
I do know where you are. Well, I don't know precisely where you are, but I know that you're in Kenya. You're in a you're what do they call it on
Paradise?
you're doing a remote broadcast.
There you go.
Yeah.
Eat your heart out today, show. I'm doing
Yeah.
a remote broadcast. I'm in the northern, actually central part of Kenya. I'm actually right on the equator. I'm literally at the zero latitude line. I'm sitting right on the equator right now, though it is just past 5 o'clock in the evening here, 5:30 in the evening here. A beautiful evening. We actually got to go to Jane Goodall's chimpanzee sanctuary today, closed down specifically for us, and it was a backstage access. You know, this is one of the most misunderstood experiences. So it's something that I've grown up coming here. So I thought this episode was really specific because all the places I've been going to today are places that I came to with my father when I was Shiv's age and younger. So it's here. So you've heard me talk about Shiv, and you've heard me talk about my son so many times on this podcast.
I'm so excited that you're here today, Shiv, because yes, now I feel like I was saying before we got started that I know it sounds corny when an old person says, I feel like I know you, but I just it's so fun to have you here today.
Yes, absolutely. I'm so glad. I'm so grateful for you guys having me here today. You guys have such a really good reputation among everyone in my community. And honestly, you guys have a great pushing forward with the job that you guys are trying to do throughout the world. So it's really good to
Oh
be
my
here
Oh,
today.
look at that.
He's
Look at that.
smooth too. Look at
He's hitting it
that.
out of the park to the beginning. Look at
Yes.
that. Way to go, Junior. Oh, this is awesome. Well, World, this is Shiv, my son. Shiv, this is World. Say hi.
Nice to meet you guys. I am Shiv.
So, this podcast has been gaining in popularity. We actually have been getting so many listeners every month, and we've been coming out with different topics and getting into multiple episodes with each topic to be able to drill down. Last episode, we were talking with your daughter, Leigh. We were talking with Caroline specifically about the benefits of being a world citizen. Now, being a world citizen doesn't mean traveling the world in luxury style and whatnot. It doesn't only mean that or always mean that. It means being aware. And we talked about something that, when the word tolerant, that's the wrong word. When we talk about world cultures, the word isn't tolerant, it's understanding. Right? We're not tolerant of other cultures, we're understanding about the culture. So the second part of this episode, we're going to be talking to you, Shiv. We're going to be talking about basically having you illustrate for us what a world citizen looks like and what the benefits of it is. We were able to reference university studies last episode where we talked about a 13% increase in grades in test scores among children who travel, children who are exposed to other cultures. We talked about their incomes and how it was 12 to 15% higher than the mean if you were exposed to other cultures, and just in general the access, everything from social skills to your quality of life. And these tests were done with adults reflecting on I guess they would call it the source of how they became as successful as they are. So Leigh, we thought, let's take that to the other side and let's talk to the actual subjects, the children that these tests keep talking about. Let's
Right.
prove if they're right. Caroline helped us pretty much prove every single point.
Yeah.
So we're
Yeah.
going to have, go ahead, Leigh, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, and she's a little further along. She just graduated from college. Yeah, headed to grad school in the fall, and you're getting ready to start college. So
Yeah.
you're just a few years behind her in that. But yeah,
Shiv, you're going to love this. She's going to grad school to be a sports psychologist to work with high performers, specifically high-performing athletes and high-performing individuals.
Awesome. So
That's
LeBron
pretty
James is
cool.
on that list then. That's awesome.
Yes. Yes, I told her when I found out that Simone Biles took her therapist with her to the Olympics. Who knows where she'll end up. But
Right.
Look at
That's
that.
awesome.
Did you just say LeBron James on this podcast?
I did. Yes, I did.
Okay, hold on. You know what? Before we go any further, Shiv, let's prove to everybody that you're on the right track. Who is the greatest of all time, Michael Jordan or LeBron James?
LeBron
Oh,
James.
No, no, no,
no.
no, no,
Okay,
no,
cut,
no.
Seen the man play.
cut.
You
Let's,
clearly need to work on your world citizenry here a little bit. No, just
okay,
kidding.
you know what? We're done. I'm just kidding. I'm just joking. I'm
So,
just joking.
Shiv, I was in university with Michael Jordan, same time that he was in at University of North Carolina. So I will, Michael Jordan will always be the GOAT for me, but I get it.
Right. Now I get it. I understand.
And I
But
happen to meet Michael Jordan in Phoenix, so I'm always gonna say I got to see him play live, so I'm gonna say
That's
Jordan's the
awesome.
GOAT.
Yeah.
Sorry.
everyone says he's a jerk, but I mean, LeBron is he's just
We
a nice
said
guy.
GOAT, not nice person. We said GOAT, not nice person. There's a
But
difference.
wait. I think this is a jumping off point
It
for
is.
a world citizen. He's picked somebody based on their character and not their skills. I
This
think
is
this
actually
is a life
very
skill
true.
kind of thing.
All right, this is actually very true. All right, Shiv, I think you might actually win this battle. This is actually a very good point. So let's talk about this. Okay, so Shiv, when you mentioned LeBron, besides basketball skills, you mentioned because you think
Mhm.
Michael Jordan's a jerk, and Mr. Jordan, if you're listening, I apologize. But Shiv, you did mention that. Tell me why, remove basketball, tell me why that's important to you. And because you've talked about this before, tell me why it's important, why you see LeBron as a GOAT instead of Jordan based on attitude, and what drives you to that decision? Because I think Leigh's onto something.
Okay, so first thing is his, I guess, reputation again around the world. Everybody looks at him as just though I do, as their go, especially in my generation. People who didn't get to see play or didn't get to see Jordan play, they have seen LeBron play. And besides that, I say his expectancy, like how long he's been playing in the NBA for, right? He comes every day with the mentality that he has to take care of his body. He invests over $1 million every year just to take care of his body. And because of that, he's been able to put up almost 40 points a game every single game at 40 years old, right? So that besides those things, it's his attitude throughout the game. It's his attitude. It's how he keeps pushing and still thinks he's the best, even at 40 years old, with all the youngsters in the NBA.
What would you what would you attribute to him being a high achiever? You know, we all know his story. He came from the projects, and it is a pretty inspiring story. But what would you say? What would you ascertain? You know, if you were to think about it, if somebody were to ask you that this is a high performer, what would you say would be the main reason how he became a high performer? What would you attribute to it?
I believe, honestly, he came from nothing, so he had nothing to lose in a way. So when you come from nothing in that perspective, right? He came with no father. He just had his mother. And to be one of the only players to come directly from high school, not even from college, means a lot as well. It shows their dedication, their drive, their work ethic in order to get to where they are today. But besides that, where he is now, he doesn't forget where he comes from. That's the other thing, right? So he has a lot of programs that he invests over millions and millions of dollars into. And these are programs that help kids just like him and is in Akron, Ohio that are going through the same thing, right? And not just in Ohio, but other places around the world. He has education programs, he has housing programs, he has things all over the world that help these kids and families. But that also carries his reputation. That's why people see him as his GOAT rather than just the skills that he presents in basketball.
Couldn't have put that better myself. I think he might be convincing me.
Yeah, I might change.
It might change as
Might
well.
change.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Mr. Jordan. Please forgive me. Please don't come find me. This is interesting because last episode with Caroline, we talked about attitude as an attribute of a world citizen. We talked about confidence, right? Self-confidence, and you know, in terms of moving forward and being a high achiever as an attribute of being a world citizen. And Shiv, you said it. Somebody who has nothing to lose, right? They come from nothing, so they have nothing to lose. You know what? That's so well put. That really is. It is so well put because that's exactly right. So, Shiv, I consider you to be a high achiever, and not just because you're my son. I do believe you're a high achiever because, you know, me and your mother see how hard you work, and Leigh knows me. I talk about it incessantly, how hard you work and how committed, how driven you are. I've seen you achieve things that people have said you couldn't do, and you're just getting started. So Watch, after this, he's gonna get a big head. Oh gosh. Uh, so I do consider you a high achiever. So let's talk about this for a second. You've obviously had the privilege of traveling the world with me and your mom. You've had the privilege of seeing things that most children don't. Pretend you couldn't travel, but you were exposed to all those cultures either through virtual means, through education. Take me through that process. Give me an example how something you've experienced has influenced what you do. And tell me, if you weren't able to go there physically and do it virtually, would it still have the same impact?
Let me start with the part if I didn't get
Mm-hmm.
influence or was there in person, right? So
Mm-hmm.
in school right now, let's just do it in school. They talk about cultures in our history books. They talk about cultures, religions, but specifically, let's say Hinduism, for example, right?
Mm-hmm.
In our books, there's so much in Hinduism, but they don't even show it. They don't do any justice as to what our culture is about. And again, as a Hindu, I can tell you there's a lot to our culture, but in our books, there's nothing in there. Like, there's not enough. They give these little basic ideals, but it doesn't show the variety and yeah, the variety of our culture. But besides that, let's go to South America. You know, you look at the the tribes. There's a lot of native tribes within South America, right? You got the Mayans, you have the Incas. All those tribes have amazing culture.
Well, the Mayans are in Central America. The Mayans are more in Central America.
Right, South and Central America. But the point is they have really, really good, really, really amazing and unique cultures. And for a lot of even if you see it visually, you see it on social media, you see it in textbooks, it doesn't do it justice. But if you're in person, right, and this is going back to where I was, being in person to see these religions, you get to see what they offer, what is so special to them. You don't like they care so much about it and they don't want it to get taken away. There's just a big difference. And again, like I said, it does not do justice when you're just seeing it not in person.
Yeah, go ahead.
Shiv, do your friends have a curiosity about your culture? Do you have opportunities to share? You know, thinking about not being in person, I'm thinking like, do you have opportunities to share your culture with your friends or raise awareness other than the 5th grade cultural fair where we all make posters and have a little bit of food there?
Yeah, so honestly, to be completely honest with you, a lot of my friends, they don't travel the world. They stay domestic. They stay in the United States, right? And the problem is that they believe that their culture, their religion, the American culture is the only thing there. They believe it's the center of the world, which it's not. They believe that, you know, what they follow is the only right thing. There's nothing like everything else is kind of just obliterate at that point, right? But if you travel the world, there's more to see. You get to open your eyes in a wide variety and perspective of things that happen throughout the world. You get to realize that your religion, your culture, whatever you follow, is only a small portion of a wide variety and huge globe and world of everything else.
It's so fantastic. I think that's really well put. I mean, you think about some of the debates we're having as adults in this world right now. It's about religion. You know, some of the conflicts we have, it's about religion. And what Shiv just said is there. Let's go a step further with that, Shiv. So now imagine if you were able to do those same things virtually, meaning that you were on a Zoom call, in a class, whatever the case may be, but you were exposed to those cultures, exposed, you know, those cultures, not physically in person, but virtually. Would the same effect still be there?
No, I don't think so. To be honest
Why?
with you, I don't think so. When you're there in person, you get like a physical like feeling of energy, especially when
Oh,
they perform their prayers, their culture, whatever it might be. You get a physical feeling of energy. When you're on Zoom, whether the Wi-Fi is good, not, it doesn't matter. You don't get the same feeling. You you kind of see it as like an online class that we were taking when we were in COVID. It's not the same thing. Like it's not, you don't care about it as much unless you're in there in person.
sure. That
Empathy. Weren't we talking about that last time?
we sure were. And he's
Yeah.
proving this study because there was that study that was done. I think it was Michigan State that talked about talking to adults who are high achievers and their positions and them attributing their success to being in person. Now, the word energy came out of that. Shiv uses this word a lot around the house, which I think is fantastic. Because it's the truth. I had a conversation today with the manager of the camp I'm at right now in the northern part of Kenya, and we talked about energy. And I was telling him just that when I first met him and talking to him, that there was a certain connection that we felt, that there was an energy. And yesterday he visited this elephant sanctuary that we go to. It's a community-run elephant sanctuary. I let him take my place. I've been there before. He lives in Kenya. He's third generation Kenyan. He's never been there. And he was in tears when he saw it. He was sending messages back to his 1-year-old nephew to say, look what I saw. His nephew is now older. He was one at the time when he first, when he came into his life. But his nephew's probably, I think, 9 or 10 now. And his nephew's asking, when are we going to go? That sounds amazing. When are we going to go? He was moved. This is a guy whose photographs have been featured on BBC, on National Geographic. He's renowned. And he was brought down to this humanized level to basically say, this is something that's in my own backyard. I've wanted to go my entire life. And now I got the chance to go. And so that's the energy. So what Shiv's talking about is exactly that. There's an energy that you feel. Now, if anybody who's listening right now doesn't understand what that means, you should probably change right now. Just stop listening right now. You're not going to get anything else. But those of you who understand what I'm talking about, that's key. Shiv, tell us more about that energy. What does that mean?
So to make you understand, I guess in a more simpler terms, right? So for me and my dad,
no.
I don't know about you.
Simpler terms. He's telling me, he's dumbing it down for me is what he's telling me.
No.
I need the dumbing down. Go, Shiv.
So for me and my dad, we love cars. I don't know about you, Leigh. You might be the same way. I don't know. But me and my dad, we absolutely love cars. And if you see your dream car on a Zoom call, on social media, on a video, on a YouTube video, whatever, yes, you like it. You're like, oh my God, it looks so good. But when you go in person, you actually see it and you touch it with your real hand, you sit inside of it, it's a whole different feeling. You start to get this feeling of like, oh my God, like I'm here. Like this is it. Or when you buy like your dream car, this is it. Like, like I've dreamed of this for so long and I finally did it. Right? It's that perspective. The same thing applies. It's that energy that I just said before. It's the same energy. You feel connected to your car. Even if it's not yours, you have a feeling of connection to it. And the same thing applies to cultures and religions, being there in person or doing it virtually. The same thing applies.
I think he's right. I think Shiv's absolutely correct on this.
It's the 1967 Volkswagen Beetle for me, and it's the smell. It's the smell that gets me every time. That's very distinct smell. But for me, Shiv, that brings memories and experiences and all that. And the thing itself is sort of what transports me into.
Memories is the right word.
Yeah.
Memories is exactly it. In terms of, excuse me one second. Well, never mind. I'm in the wilderness. This is completely completely live. So my sneeze was muted, I hope.
It was.
Good. All right. So Shiv, let's talk about that a bit more. I already know what your dream car is. You want to go ahead and share it?
I have a couple actually.
Oh boy. Yeah.
It's either the McLaren.
Oh no, there's
or maybe the let me think.
Well, hang on. Let's stop at the McLaren Senna because this is another good rabbit hole to go down. Why is that your favorite car? Who is it named after?
Ayrton Senna. It's a legacy that it leaves behind it.
So this is something that's important. So Shiv and I have been following car racing. I used to sit down with Shiv and watch Formula One specifically. Since how old were you, Shiv? We started watching Formula One together?
Probably 9 or 10, probably.
Yeah, and I've been watching it since I was his age.
Yeah.
So I watched Senna race, when he was racing. I watched him, the race that he lost his life. I watched all that. I was invested in him. And again, to a point, right? It's virtual. But this car is his favorite, not because of the performance of the car and everything else, but specifically because of what this car represents, who it's named after. So the legacy, the driver that I believe was the greatest driver of all time, and that's arguable. I don't think it is, but some people say it is. Shiv now believes the same thing. Right, Shiv?
I do.
So go ahead, Shiv.
No, I was going to say, to connect it back, the reason why, besides the skills, again, that's arguable, but it's the legacy he leaves outside of the sport. The programs he does in Brazil to help the many, many children that are in poverty, that is the same thing that LeBron does to the kids in Ohio and around the world. So there's a connection there of why the GOATs are not just good skillfully, but what they do outside of their sports.
I can't wait for your mom to hear this recording so she knows what a good job I did as a dad. I'm just kidding.
I was going to ask Shiv who he thinks influences him more in his world.
Oh, ask. Go ahead, Shiv.
Who does?
Give him an honest
Mom
answer.
or dad? Who influences
Give him an honest answer, and it better be me. I'm just kidding.
It actually probably is dad. Honestly, it probably is.
Oh,
Yeah.
look at that.
But what?
You know what?
Yeah.
You know what, Leigh? I think it's you influence Caroline so much. You could see it when we talking to Caroline. You could see how much you influence her, and her eyes lit up when we talked about what you went through to raise her. As a single mom and everything else. So Shiv took us down this rabbit hole, and it wasn't what honestly, all the prep that I did for today's episode, I didn't expect to go down this place, but I'm really glad we did, because he just connected it back to LeBron. And it has nothing to do with the sport and everything to do with social responsibility. So that's interesting. So what you're basically saying, Shiv, is that you choose heroes, sports heroes, icons, whatever you want to call it, partly based on their skill and legacy, but there's also a part that's based on who they are as a person and the legacy they're leaving. Is that a fair statement?
Absolutely. Yeah. I believe how they act on camera during while they're playing their sport and how they act off camera when they're not playing their sport can be directly correlated with how they are as a person.
I think that's pretty powerful. Charles Barkley said something, remember when he was playing, in the Jordan years, he said, "I'm not a role model."
Wow.
He's right. He's not. And neither is Michael Jordan. And neither is Shaquille O'Neal. And neither is, Steffi Graf. And neither is, Boris Becker, Pete Sampras. So you name it, right? Whoever it is. They're not. And yet they are. And would you say, Shiv, that the exposure you had to all these global cultures, that shapes how you look at a role model when you see an athlete coming up? Does that play into your mind? Do you associate what they do off the court, off the field, off the whatever? Do you associate that with what you've seen during your travels? I mean, do you draw a parallel or a connection?
Absolutely. I believe when you go to these third world countries, outside the United States, because in the United States, there's poverty, yes. But when you go outside of third world countries, it's a whole different story. It's a whole country in poverty. Over 1 million people in poverty. It's a whole different planet, right? So when you see that, you get a different perspective on what poverty actually looks like and what it means to you. But when you see athletes, people with great influence, use their power to help those people in need, then again, it shows you how good of a person they are. It shows you that the fame hasn't got to them. They're still, their head is above this, the sky, but their feet are still on earth. That's the thing.
Oh,
They're still on the ground, right? They still remember where they come from, and they still believe they have to help everybody underneath them.
So we've covered character and humility.
Definitely.
We've covered those two things, and there was one of the studies we talked about with Caroline. Talked about character, and it talked about having self-confidence but actually approaching things with humility. We talked about that in terms of the way you see the world and the ability to want to help people, right? What Caroline's wanting to do with her life in terms of sports psychology and helping high achievers and whatnot. There's a service level to it, right? She wants to be able to help other people come up. She's not just doing it to fulfill herself. She's doing it because she wants to actually lift other people. Shiv's talking about that. He's talking about humility. He's talking about who they are, their character. He's proving this study with everything he's saying.
Right.
Okay, so Shiv, let's go forward X number of years. You're a father. Let's say, you're not in the travel business. You're going to be in a different field when you grow up. Let's say you have the ability, maybe not the means to go on this, luxury $100,000 vacation, but you have the ability to show your children, even some parts of the U.S. or other parts of the world, but it's done on a different level. Does it matter what level it's at? Meaning, does it matter how luxurious it is versus actually seeing authentic? What's more important, the luxury aspect or the authentic aspect? I know it sounds like a simple question, but if I'm willing to bet the answer is not so simple.
You're right. It's actually not that simple. So when people go on vacation, of course you want luxury, right? That's the thing. But as long as you do a combination of both, right? You can do luxury, but as long as you're able to go down to a native's perspective, right? And you go to where they actually live, I want my kids to see, like, to be grateful. Because when you see third world countries and the conditions that some of these people live in, you begin to become more grateful for the things you have, right? And I want my kids to understand that being grateful comes with being humble, right? So you need to have both, right? You can't have one greater than the other. They have to be both really equal. It's like a scale, right? So showing them that would be really, really important. And again, both combination of luxury and showing them the natural level of third world countries.
Your first trip, you probably won't remember this, but your first trip where we exposed you to social responsibility was actually in, I want to say in Guatemala. You were very young. I mean, Costa Rica came before that, but Guatemala specifically. So yeah, we exposed you to those communities that didn't have any clean drinking water. Do you remember that at all?
I do. I do remember we made the stoves for them with Uncle Jimmy. I remember him now.
Sure, you were 8 or 9 years old, maybe even 7. I mean,
Yes, I
that's
remember.
Yeah. For
all
that
right.
whole
So
trip, was that one of the standouts of that?
that was, well, that's a good question, Shiv. Was it? Was it one of the standouts, or what was that something? What else do you remember from that trip?
Uh, to be honest, yes, I remember some of the luxury stuff, but that's not the biggest thing I remember was helping other people, right? The stoves, the clean water. And I do want to say this though, back to the point where we were saying what's the difference between being in person and visually. I took AP psychology in my high school like a couple years ago, right? And what I learned is that when you involve all five senses into whatever you're doing, you're going to have a higher rate of memorizing it for a longer time.
Oh,
When you're a visual, you get to see things and hear things, but you lose the smelling, the sensing, all those things. And Leigh, you said earlier, your 1967 Volkswagen Beetle, you said that smell elicits a amazing response in you, right?
Yeah. Oh,
That same thing takes place in person. Having the sense of all five senses in whatever you're doing, that leaves a greater memory and a greater impact within your brain.
think that's pretty powerful. I mean,
Yeah.
the fact that you remembered that. Okay, I'm gonna quiz you right now. Do you remember a child your age when we were installing those wood stoves, and do you remember what happened to that child?
I believe he had something with his lungs, I believe. I remember seeing
Mm-hmm.
him inside one of his houses
Mm-hmm.
with his mom. Can't remember exactly, but I know there's something wrong with there's something with his lungs, I believe.
That's right. They were carcinogens because they were using a wood stove without any kind of exhaust, so all these fumes were coming out of the house, and it was his lungs. He basically couldn't breathe. He didn't have the means to get to a hospital, and that kid was your age. He was 7. That's How do you remember that? That was what
Five
impacted
senses.
the five
Five
senses.
senses. That's right.
Hey, Mom, you're welcome.
That's so sweet.
This is Shiv's proving this theory that we kept talking about. Do you remember we talked about there was a relative theory, right? That we talked about those theories, and I remember that we had in the last episode. So whoever wants to know about that, go back to the last episode and listen. You'll be able to actually see what we're talking about in terms of the different theories as universities and studies put forward. But they did talk about this. Shiv, those five senses, just for our listeners, just for the sake, what are the five senses?
Uh, looking, feeling, smelling, hearing. Looking, smelling, feeling, hearing. What is the
Taste.
fifth one? Taste. That's what it was. Yes. Thank you.
That's my favorite. That's how that
Okay.
was the first one that came to mind for me because
Okay, got you.
food.
Yeah. Something like that.
All right. All right, so that's good. So tell me something. Is there a specific taste that reminds you of that experience?
Of Guatemala?
Yes.
Um, Honestly, it might be guava.
Oh,
Ooh.
we
It
did
might be
have guava on
guava.
that trip.
It's
We
like a
did have.
pink guava. That's usually what reminds me of Guatemala.
That's actually what we had, and he was eating them like they're going out of style.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
So
remember.
there, all right, and he got that taste from me as well. All right, so Okay, this is really good because, like I said, it is proving what we talked about. It's proving this theory that we talked about in terms of just the the notion that that we need we're immersing, and it's interesting you said something. Yes, the luxuries are nice, but you didn't remember the luxuries. Let's go forward to, is there any trip any trip you've taken that just stands out in your memory that touched those five senses, and what would it be, and what was the experience? Go
It
to any of the
might
trips you've
be
taken.
it might be Peru, to be honest with you. Or maybe Colombia. Let's do Peru. Because we didn't help anybody per se, but we did what do you call experience their culture, religion, the ancient Inca culture. We did experience that. And when we did, that hit all five senses because we were eating a couple of things, we felt things, we smelled things, we heard things, right? So though that inflicted a memory within my brain. But maybe let's talk about Colombia instead. I didn't get to really taste anything that helped with that, but the other four senses were all there. When we went and helped with the Colombian Navy to deliver goods on that island, the Costa Cartagena, that was something to remember with that. Absolutely. Right? Because you get to see things, right? You get to see everybody almost crying when we got there. You heard things, you heard, talking, you heard laughter, you heard happiness seeing us. You felt, actually delivering and helping kids physically. Um, you were able to smell like that smell. Like it was just like a very obviously it was run down, but you could smell it was a distinct smell there. And it's in my memory. It's like like a saltyish smell that's still there. Like even though it's 3 years ago, 4 years ago, it's still like I can still think about it. I can still smell
It
it.
was the cheese empanadas that have a salty
Yeah,
smell. It was the
that. But
cheese
even just being
empanadas.
Oh,
there,
and
the
then the
island.
water,
Yeah,
probably the salt water.
exactly. Yeah.
So I'm gonna bring this back full circle for you, Shiv. You're speaking to Leigh, who was the very first female expedition captain in all of North America. She's in the Coast Guard. She was in the Coast Guard as well. She's taken, I mean, some pretty crazy ships to some pretty crazy places. So Shiv got to drive 1,000 horsepower Navy fast boat.
That's
Uh,
incredible.
that's
I
there. You're
remember when you
so
guys were doing that. I was so envious.
Leigh was with us, but so Shiv, you're talking to a legend right now, and it ain't me.
Ah.
Man.
I mean, this is this again. We're proving this point. So, to all of our listeners, what we're basically saying, and this conversation really focuses in on the fact that being a world citizen means being an aware citizen. So Shiv talks about the five senses. Shiv talks about hitting at least four of the five senses, if not all five senses. The fact
Okay.
that it drives.
There's a look behind you.
Who's back
You see what's
behind you?
behind me? Do you see
What
what's
is
behind
that?
me?
Speaking of
That's an
awareness,
antelope. That's
an
a
antelope.
it was either a gazelle or an antelope that's behind me.
Sorry,
Yeah.
you were getting ready to set up for a question, but we couldn't let that moment pass.
No, we couldn't. And yeah, we'll see. If we had started this podcast maybe about an hour before, you would have seen an elephant walking right past me as well, on that side.
Wow.
So there was that. I was, today I've been just reflecting on memories that I had with my father. I went to one particular place. We saw the very last two northern white rhinos in existence in the entire world. After these two are gone, they're extinct. They've had embryos, but the embryos have not been successful, but they're still trying. But these are the last two living northern white rhinos. The guide who took us around, his name is Zachariah. I started just placing him as I was talking to him. And Shiv talks about taste and feel and touch and all these senses. And something came back, something came back, something came back. And then I remember being here when I was actually Shiv's age. I remember coming here, and I remember being here, and I remember I was here. This was in the 90s. I was here. And I remember walking through, and there was no gates, there's no fences, nothing there. And there was the last male. There were, at the time, there were two male white rhinos, northern white rhinos, and I saw them as well. So then I talked to the guide, talked to Zachariah, and I said, Zachariah, you're too young to have been here in the 90s, but you look really familiar. I was here, and I was here with my father in the 90s, but you look way too young. He then proceeds to ask me the year. I tell him the year was like 92, 93, right around there. somewhere roundabouts, and we started talking about the rest of the 90s. And I came back several times during the 90s. Turns out I was here with his father. And we were actually, what drew this off, and Shiv talks about this sense, I remember being told to pull up my socks, right? And literally, not figuratively, pull up my socks, tuck my pant legs into my socks. And it was my father telling me, tuck my pant legs into my socks. And I said, why, Dad, why? And he goes, because of snakes. I said, what? What snakes? Come on. We walked through, saw everything. There were no fences at the time. Saw the Northern White Rhinos. They were under guard. So the Rangers were there with machine guns, whatnot. You're supposed to have. And I was Shiv's age, maybe even younger. And I walked out. And as we walked out towards the car, and we had Dad's car, and we walked out towards the car, on the ground as we're walking towards a puff adder, which is a thick, poisonous snake. It's about this big. It's one of the deadliest snakes in the world. It goes right past my feet. And I looked at him, and I started tugging my socks up more. He looks at me, and my father goes, "What's the point now? The snake's already passed. What's the point now?" Now, this is interesting because I mean, I've encountered poisonous snakes in different places, including at our own front door at home. But it evoked a memory, and it proves what Shiv's talking about. So this is something. I'm 47, so we're going back decades, and this is still a memory that was evoked today. And I remember smelling the grass. I was smelling honestly, it was a rhino dung that I smelled. And I remember smelling it, and I remember being charged by a black rhino, because black rhinos are really ornery. They charge. The white rhinos are more docile, but black rhinos charge. And I remember being charged by a black rhino. I wasn't in danger. We weren't anywhere near that, but I remember that happening. And I started refreshing. So as Shiv was talking today, I started reflecting like, oh yeah, this is what happened today. This is what happened earlier today. We went over to a chimpanzee sanctuary, and then what came to mind is with my father again. And I got to meet Jane Goodall when I was, younger than Shiv. I got to meet Jane Goodall when her sanctuary first opened, and seeing what it is now, and seeing these chimpanzees who all have PTSD. They have been abused and have pure PTSD, and seeing that because of how they behave and how dangerous they've become in terms of it. One of the caregivers was there and got bitten up by the chimpanzees in the hospital for 3 months. Recovering. So it goes back to what Shiv's talking about. All these things stand out, and all these decades later, something happens that just evokes it. So Shiv, let's go forward to future Shiv, 3 decades from now. Okay, so you're 17 right now, you're about to be 18. So 3 decades means you're 27, 37, 47. Okay, so you're my age, you're 47 years old. 3 decades later, let's pretend you don't take any more trips. These are the only ones you've taken. 3 decades later, what stands out, or what lesson is in your mind that is impacting how you live your life based on all the travels you've taken? One lesson.
Being grateful for what you have. Absolutely.
Okay.
Being grateful for what you have. Approaching everything you do, or all the opportunities you get, humbly, with humility. Right? Yeah, so being confident, but not being overconfident, like still remembering where you come from, right? So like I said before, having your head above the sky, but your feet are still on the ground, right? You still remember where you come from. Those are the biggest things, and still helping those in need, right? No matter how rich, how poor you may be, but still helping those who might be less fortunate than you.
And he just mimicked what his heroes, or his high performing, the people he looks up to, the LeBron James, who was the other person, Shiv, besides LeBron James? Who was the other person that you talked
Dwayne
about?
Wade.
Dwayne Wade. You talked about all these people, and how they live their life, and humility and whatnot, and Ayrton Senna you talked about, right? So here he's taking those lessons from his heroes. He's applying them based on what he's experienced, and now he's going forward 3 decades. 4 decades, 5 decades, and that same lesson is now applying. If that's not full circle, I don't know what is. If that's not how a lesson sticks, then I don't know what is, right? We can teach all the advanced vector calculus we want to teach, which Shiv is good at, by the way. We can teach all that calculus we can teach. We can teach all the advanced Spanish, all the advanced foreign languages, chemistry, you name it. If we don't teach the tangible stuff, the stuff you learn from being a world citizen, Everything else is just book smarts.
Yep.
Everything else
Good
is
job,
just.
Dad. Your work is done.
I'm retiring, by the way, Shiv. I'm moving in with you.
All right.
Just he said that way too quickly, which means after he's gonna say, "Oh no, please, no, 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 you're cramping my style, Dad." So, Leigh, Shiv, I'll start with you. Any final thoughts that you want to share with everybody? And I think, Leigh, I think we should have him back. What do you think?
I do, for sure, Shiv. I think we just are at the tip of the iceberg with you, my friend.
I agree. I think you blew my mind today. So this is awesome. Yeah. That's one less thing I screwed up. It's perfect. It's even better. So let's think about this. Okay, so Shiv, any parting words that you want to share with our listeners?
I want, especially kids my age or younger than me, I want you to dedicate your life to your legacy, to what you're going to leave behind, right? So I just want to leave. I didn't talk about this earlier today. I want to talk about Dwayne Wade real quick, just so you understand what I'm talking about. In Miami, if you ever go to a Miami Heat game and you go to the community in Miami, it doesn't matter how rich, how poor you are, from the poorest to the richest, everybody has a Dwayne Wade jersey.
That's right, they do.
It doesn't matter if he's retired, if he was playing, everyone has a Dwayne Wade jersey, right? And even if it's not his favorite player, if it's not their favorite player, it's a legacy he leaves behind, right? I want you to approach life the same way. So every 10 years, right, and it's a famous quote I learned from Matthew McConaughey on his Oscars, and it was that every 10 years, that's your goal, right? So, when someone asks you, how do you see yourself, or who's your hero? Your hero is yourself 10 years in the future, right? And once you achieve that 10 years, you're never your hero, but you continue to become better and better and better every single 10 years. Oh, my laptop's going to die. Let me recharge that real quick. And you have to have that same legacy behind, helping those in need and still continue to be the best hero you can be, and leaving the legacy is what's really important. That's what drives you to become the best version you can be. That tells you that, your life was successful, right? You've done what you could do, and you did the best that you could do.
All right.
Yeah.
That was really well said. You know what? Actually, that's advice that all of us can take.
Mm-hmm.
You be the version of you 10 years from now. Good job, Junior. That was actually really good. Be the version of you 10 years from now. That's your hero is you 10 years from now. It's profound. It's absolutely true.
Mm-hmm.
In this world, we don't need anybody else except ourselves, right? We of course crave relationships. We need relationships. We need compassion. We need, to be able to interact. But to be able to achieve our goals, we just need ourselves. And that's actually sage advice. To be the best version of you, figure out who you want to be 10 years from now. And that's who you end up being. That's fantastic. Really, really well done. Leigh, any parting thoughts you want to share?
Shiv, thank you so much. I've learned so much. I'm inspired by you, and I would encourage people my age to reach out and have conversations with people your age, because I think that sometimes we lose as an older person. I'm early 60s. Lose focus. We aren't in touch with all the great things that young people your age are doing, and what you care about more than anything, what you care about, and what legacy are we leaving for you. And so being able to ask you, what can we do to help you and serve you, I think is important.
Thank you. Well said. Shiv, really well done. We are going to have you back. I think you some pretty profound thoughts, and I'm not just saying this because you're my son. I think that children your age should be learning the stuff you're talking about. It doesn't matter how much money you have or don't have. It doesn't matter how you travel or don't travel. The fact that you're actually able to be exposed, and again, that word we come back to, not tolerant of other cultures, understanding, embracing other cultures, looking at that and being able to understand from a higher level where everything goes. So, Shiv, I want to thank you as well. This was really, really well done. You did a fantastic job today. To all of our listeners, thank you for listening. If you like what you hear, make sure you subscribe. Make sure you find us on whatever avenue you're listening on, whether it's Spotify, Apple, whether it's on Amazon. Find us, YouTube, listen to us, hit the subscribe button on YouTube. And remember, This podcast is about big successes in small places. If you want to be the success that you want to see, then take Shiv's advice. Find out who you want to be in 10 years and go after that person. Take care, everybody.
Thank you for listening to The Sustainable Voice. If you have a success story of your own, please reach out and share it with us. We'd love to hear from you. See you next time.